first draft of my 4th dissertation chapter, and I finished it on Thursday. It's now Monday, and I haven't looked at it since then. And that's something that I always like to do when I'm working on a writing project, is to set it aside for a while before reading it and making edits on it, so I can kind of come back to it with some fresh eyes. And so I have not looked at this or thought about this in like 4 or 5 days. I like to do a very messy, rough draft where I'm just sketching out big ideas and then figure out the details and the phrasing of everything later. And now it's later. So today, basically my entire workday is just going to be reading back over this and marking up this draft, and also, as I'm reading through, making a list of the main tasks that I am going to need to do to edit it. I have my chapter draft, I have my notebook to make a list of my revision items, and I have a calendar of the remainder of the month of December. As of a few months ago, my goal was to send this chapter to my advisor while it is still 2023. I send her chapter drafts when they're about like 80% done, and so none of my previous chapters have gotten to 100% done, but all of them are at like a pretty good stage where I have a view of what's happening in the entire chapter, and then she gives me her feedback, and I don't make further edits. I just move on to the next chapter. And I really wanted to get all of them done this calendar year. I no longer really think that's possible, but I'm still going to treat it like it's possible. And so I'm going to read through this chapter, make my revision checklist, and then I'm going to make a schedule on this calendar of how I could hypothetically get this all done before Christmas. It's a stretch goal. I might fail to meet that goal, and that's fine, but we're gonna find out after reading through this chapter if it's even remotely possible. When I'm doing a first read-through of a first draft, my emphasis is not so much on fixing the problems as just identifying them. And so as I am doing my initial read-through, I'm really looking for places where I have either gone on tangents that aren't going to belong, or maybe I have moved on too quickly before fully expanding on an idea that I had. And that's really the majority of what I was finding in this first read-through of these first pages. I was finding a lot of points at which I raised an idea or quoted a moment from one of my literary texts and then just kind of moved on too quickly when I should have paused and more fully drawn out the idea that I was working on, or more fully analyzed the moment of the play, or brought in some supporting critical information or something like that. So what I'm doing as I'm making my notes in the margin is not actually doing the writing of expanding on the idea so much as identifying that I'm going to need to come back to this later, spend more time, and flesh these things out more. As far as editing goes, it's pretty low stress because I'm not actually doing the work right now. I'm just making a list of work for future me. So future me is going to be maybe suffering a little bit, but current me just gets to point out all the problems that past me made. But we're all a team. All the versions of me who are writing this draft, we're all working towards the same goal. I've made it through about 8.5 pages, and it's very slow going reading back through this, but it's honestly not as bad as I thought it was going to be. The quality of the writing and kind of the shape of the chapter so far. Usually at this stage, I have the backs of most of my pages covered with notes and things to expand, and I have whole sections crossed out and everything, and I don't really have that. But I'm still just 8 pages into the chapter, and I'm only talking about Othello at this point, which is a play that's kind of familiar ground for me since I've spent a lot of time working with this play in the past. So we'll see what happens when I get into some of the more minor texts, less studied by people in general and by me in particular. I just flipped ahead to page 10, and there's a section here where I've just written other texts and then the name of a couple different plays that I was considering maybe reading and putting in this chapter, but I haven't read them. So yeah, there's plenty of work to be done. But right now, I need to eat lunch. Get back into it. I work mostly with plays that were performed for the commercial stage in England in like the late 1500s, early 1600s, but I don't just do commercial theater plays. I do other forms of literature, including other forms of theater. And one of those forms of theater is called a masque, sometimes spelled masque like the word you're familiar with now, sometimes spelled M-A-S-Q-U-E. And these are this really interesting little genre of performance that were specific to elite domestic and political situations. So you would have these performed very often at court or just in like fancy homes basically, and they were very often to celebrate an occasion like a visiting dignitary or a wedding or something like that. And so they're this very interesting genre that is a literary text and a historical moment at the same time. And Queen Anne, who is the wife of James I, who succeeded Queen Elizabeth, was a big fan of the masques and was very involved in putting these performances on, including acting in them, which of course you couldn't do on a commercial stage. Women were not allowed to perform on stage, but in a masque, which was in a more private situation and more elite, women could do things like that. And so I'm looking at this one masque that is called the Masque of Blackness. That is one that not only did Queen Anne perform in, but she specifically requested that this play or this masque be written for her to perform in blackface. She really wanted to appear in a masque as a black woman costumed in full body blackface. The narrative of this masque is that a group of women in Africa have always considered themselves to be beautiful, but then they read a lot of poetry that teaches them that actually blackness is not beautiful, whiteness is beautiful. And so they go in search of a land where they have heard that the waters will wash the blackness off of them. And it turns out that land is Britannia, and so they kind of journey to England basically to try to become beautiful by washing away their blackness. And obviously this is just loaded with all kinds of complicated and harmful ideas about race and beauty. And it's also a very interesting place to look at staging race and identity and the way that this was performed, because the stage makeup at the time that would be used for something like Othello or Masque of Blackness was very thick, kind of indelible face paint. It was not realistic looking, and it was very hard to get off. And so for Queen Anne and her ladies to be costumed with their faces and their bare arms, scandalously, covered in this black paint, they could not actually take it off on the same day that they put it on. And so even though the narrative of this play is that these women are going to be transformed from black to white, that transformation actually couldn't take place on the same day. And so the conclusion to the masque, which is called the Masque of Beauty, in which they are transformed to be white, doesn't actually take place until years later. And I'm trying to write through some ideas about it and figure out how it fits into my dissertation. So it's time to jump into that section. My research now is focused on hospitality, but when I started my master's degree, I was more interested in food, and I really was fascinated by early modern English cookbooks, which cookbook didn't really exist as a genre, but they were these domestic guidebooks that had food recipes and also cosmetic recipes and medical texts all bound up together. And you would be surprised at how often they become relevant in reading English literature this time. Like with this play, The Masque of Blackness, I have read domestic guidebooks that have recipes for how you can whiten and soften your skin. And so reading back through all of these recipe books actually gave me some frame of reference for what the associations with a play like this might have been at the time, other than just the commentary on race and national identity and foreignness and all these things. They're all bound up together in these complicated ways that are really fascinating and also challenging to unravel and understand today. As the afternoon went along and I started thinking about how much work there was to do with this chapter and how much I really wanted to get it done, or some semblance of done, within this calendar year, I forced myself to kind of pick up the pace, had another coffee, and started just going through in a more business-like way, not getting too distracted by things like musing on how fascinated early modern English cookbooks are, so that I could work through this first read-through and then move on to the next stage. Okay, I read through all 32 messy pages of this, and honestly, it could be a lot worse. And now it's time for the fun part, which is making a list of all of the revision items that I need to complete, estimating about how long they will take me, and trying to make a schedule to get this into a version that I would be happy to send to my advisor, which I want to do before December 21st. And now I'm gonna try to see if that is feasible. After I've read through the entire chapter and gotten a sense of what the major issues and points of expansion that I need to address are, I take that little list that I had been scrawling some notes on throughout the workday, and I start to make it into a more formal list. And the main thing that I start off by doing is separating out the research tasks and the writing tasks, because I know that I want to address the need for research before I move on to expanding through writing, since the things that I learn in my research are going to end up affecting the things that I end up writing about. Once I have my list of my tasks that I need to do, research and writing, I take those tasks and I put them into a little bit of a calendar. It's nothing fancy, it's basically just another list, but with dates this time. And so I am separating out into 2 weeks, the first one being a research intensive and the second one being a writing expansion revision intensive week. I accomplished my day's goal. I now have a little bit of a schedule of which revision and expansion items I'm going to do on which days for the next 2 weeks. The remainder of this week will be for research. All of next week will be for revision and expansion, and then the following week I have not scheduled anything because I cannot predict that far in advance what kind of work I will need to do, but that is the week I'm hoping to get this into a shape that I would send to my advisor. That is only 3 weeks. That is kind of ridiculous. It usually takes me at least a month, and honestly closer to 2 months, to revise my first draft into something I send to my advisor. And again, I'm not sure that I can actually accomplish this goal that I'm setting for myself. I don't like working around the clock, and I don't like working every day of the week on my dissertation. I like to keep some kind of work-life balance, and so I'm not sure that I can do this without sacrificing that balance. However, the reason I want to get this done so far ahead of schedule is that I really want to take like a solid break away from work around the holidays and the new year. And so that is really motivating me. The idea of being able to send this chapter to my advisor and then take like 2 weeks to do no dissertation work. That is what I'm dreaming of. Anyway, that's what this day of dissertation writing work looked like, and we'll see how the rest of the week goes. Hopefully extremely productively, surpassing all expectations. It could happen.